Okay, hi everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. Our topic today is a CHP multi-state working group, and this webinar is being brought to you by the Clean Energy States Alliance. And our host today is Todd Olinsky-Paul. He's a project director with CESA. And before we get started, I would like to go over a few quick housekeeping notes. All of our audience members are muted by default, so you can hear us, but we cannot hear you. Today we ask that you pay particular attention to making sure your audio setup is correct. If you're joining us using your telephone, please type in your audio PIN that you'll see on your webinar console into your telephone keypad. That will allow us to keep track of you and also enable a few other features that we are hoping to use. So please read those instructions. And also today, for our webinar, we have a smaller group, and we're hoping to have some audience participation. Following our presentation today, we will be calling on one representative from each state to present a brief update on your state's interest and activities related to CHP. So we'll go over some further instructions when we get to this point. But when we do get to your state, please raise your hand by clicking on the little hand icon that you'll see on your screen. It's right there, and that will let us know that you are from that state and you're requesting to be unmuted. And finally, if all else fails, you can type your questions or comments into the question box on your webinar console. So again, we will explain all of this when we get to the Q&A feature of the webinar. But for now, I'm going to pass this over to our host today, Todd Olinsky-Paul. Todd, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, and welcome everybody to the CHP webinar. I'm going to briefly introduce CESA for those of you not familiar with our organization. I will also give a very brief overview of the agenda for this webinar and then introduce the speakers, and then we'll go right into presentations. So, to begin with, CESA is a nonprofit coalition of public agencies and organizations primarily comprised of state clean energy funds and state energy agencies. And we work with state energy agencies to help them promote and develop and manage their clean energy efforts. Next slide, please. I also want to just stress that you do not need to be a CESA member or you do not need to be representing a state that has CESA membership in order to participate in this effort on CHP. We're happy to have anyone representing any state agency or federal entity on this call. But just to give you an idea, you see on your screen a slide showing the logos of the CESA member states, and a number of you are on this call. I'm glad that you could make it. Next slide, please. And I just wanted to briefly introduce the guest speakers for today. We're going to hear from Dr. Dana Levy of NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. Dana is a program manager. He's been with NYSERDA since 1999 and manages its on-site power production program. He directs a $60 million budget of financial incentives to help customers acquire on-site combined heat and power, which we refer to as CHP. It's also known as cogeneration. And he's a licensed professional engineer. He's the recipient of the U.S. CHP Champion Award and the NHP CHP Champion Award. Also, we have Val Story, a project director at CESA, on this call. She won't actually be presenting, but she's here if there are questions that arise that she can respond to. And the reason is that she directs our ITAC program, which is an effort, multi-state effort around small and medium-scale wind turbines and related systems, very similar to what we think this CHP effort might be, which means that she may have some wisdom to to be able to give us in terms of how states have worked together in the ITAC effort and what we might anticipate in this CHP effort. So if there are issues that come up that Val could speak to, I'm very happy to have her on the call, and she'll be happy to speak to those. Next slide, please. Before we go into Dana's presentation, I just want to review a couple of things. First of all, if you are calling in by telephone and you have not put the audio pin into the webinar console, please enter that pin. That's the only way we can unmute you later so that you can join the conversation. Secondly, if you need help and you can't find the pin or you don't know what to do, please type a question into the question box that you see as part of the console, and we will attempt to help you with that. Third, as I mentioned, we're going to have discussion later. I'm going to be, after the presentation by Dana, I'm going to be asking states to introduce themselves and briefly give us a sense of what your current CHP programs are and what your interest might be in this effort. To do that, I'm going to ask you to, I'm going to unmute you, and if you are from a state that has multiple representatives on this call, I'm just going to ask you to select one person from your state that will speak. We unfortunately don't have time to have 3 or 4 people from the same state agency speak. So if that's the case, if you have several people from your agency on the call, when we get to your state, I will ask somebody from your state to raise your hand, and by that I mean click on the little icon on the screen that has a picture of a hand with a green arrow pointing up, and that will cue me as to which person from your state is going to be speaking. I will then unmute that person, and we'll hear from you. Feel free to ask questions during Dana's presentation. If you have a question, there's 2 ways you can ask it. Again, you can use the hand-raising icon on your screen, and I will, when there's a pause in the presentation, I will unmute you and ask you to state your question. Or you can type your question in at any time, and I will ask it. If you want to ask a question, you don't want to necessarily identify yourself, you can always just type a question in, and I will relay the question for you. Okay, I think that's it for instructions. I've talked long enough. We want to hear from Dana Levy, and so I will now turn this over to him for his presentation.
Thank you very much, Todd. I want to start by thanking CESA for hosting this webinar and for inviting me to speak, and for the recognition of NYSERDA's CHP program with the CESA Slice Award. We hold these truths to be self-evident. We're all on this call because we appreciate combined heat and power, CHP. We think that it's a good thing. But we also recognize that perpetual use of public funds to provide subsidies is really not a sustainable activity. And we'd like to find mechanisms where we can transform the marketplace to where it will be self-sustaining. Yes, we recognize that incentivizing one project after another does help to build competency in the marketplace, but this alone is too passive an approach. And a well-crafted CHP program is important, but it's not enough. The program, the activities, the interventions really need to achieve some genuine cost reductions in the marketplace in order for CHP to reach self-sufficiency. My observation is that incentives mostly just compensate for participants to tolerate friction that they experience in the marketplace. And by friction, I mean activities that perhaps soft costs, which result in unnecessary additional costs to the project. But by resolving this friction once and for all should lead to self-sufficient markets. We've all heard the saying, give a person a fish, feed them for a day, teach a person to fish. We all know the rest of that. So what we have here is our acknowledgement that if CHP always relies on subsidies, the marketplace can grow only to the extent that the incentive budget pool will allow, whereas a self-sustaining market has no artificial cap on growth. And in self-sustaining markets, we see that project paybacks satisfy customer expectations. This gives us an opportunity to try to address both sides of that equation by making project paybacks better and by increasing customer confidence so that they will have more realistic expectations in the paybacks that they're willing to tolerate. What we see in the current situation in New York is that quite often the marketplace can deliver CHP projects with a payback in the 5 to 6 year range, but customers are demanding 3 to 4 year paybacks. And so the incentives are bridging the gap. What we'd like to achieve is to improve project paybacks so that they can deliver in the 4 to 5 year range, and to improve customer expectations so that they will tolerate projects in the 4 to 5 year payback range. Our approach is to use the power of the purse. While we have funds, while we have a significant budget for CHP, that in addition to achieving projects, we should really also achieve genuine cost reductions while increasing customer confidence. We want to kill two birds with one stone. This is intended to simultaneously address both parts of the equation, namely getting project paybacks to satisfy customer expectations. Specifically through the structure of the program that we've developed here in New York, we're able to facilitate streamlining, and this brings about cost reductions. And here's a few examples of the streamlining and facilitation that we've achieved. For us, this has all been possible because the program we've structured is based on a list of pre-approved products that are furnished by eligible installers. Our aha moment. A well-functioning market aligns itself to serve the buying habits of customers. And we've been looking at the ways that other markets have succeeded, and we're trying to emulate those. For example, to mimic the automobile market's resources of independent product reviews, such as Consumer Reports or Road and Track, Car and Driver, NYSERDA has vetted and approved a catalog, we call it the catalog, a list of modular packaged CHP systems, and right now the third iteration of the catalog details 141 reliable turnkey solutions. We've seen in their own words, these are screen capture shots from CHP vendors, and they are advertising that their products are offered as an appliance. They call them packaged, modular, standardized, all-in-one, within the box, plug and play. Here at NYSERDA, we're leveraging and reinforcing a good trend that has been growing organically in the marketplace. We want to try to align the vending and the purchasing habits based around standardized products. And I'm showing here the big circle with the slash through it. We're trying to focus on products that have mass market appeal as opposed to an infrequent and highly customized product such as the way the U.S. Navy buys an aircraft carrier. We're looking at modular housing, shopping off the rack with clothing as opposed to getting a custom tailored suit, the comparison shopping that can be done at an automotive superstore. With mature markets, we see standardized products, we see replications, we see shopper's guides, and all of that is inherent within the automobile marketplace, and we are leveraging where we can within the CHP marketplace. So we recognize that a customer really wants to buy a product, not an assemblage of components. And with a car, it would be like a customer hiring a mechanic to go to the auto parts store and procure 40,000 different components and assemble them into a car. And you've got 40,000 possibilities of failure and mismatch, as well as it would cost you 4 times more than simply buying a car off the assembly line. And every time I use this analogy, one of my colleagues chuckles. That reminds her of this Johnny Cash song. We saw that same sort of thing happening in CHP, where somebody would cobble together a variety of components, and each project looked like somebody's crazy science experiment. But the new way, the way that we're trying to emphasize, the way that the marketplace is going on its own, and we're trying to ride that momentum and help that to succeed, is based on buying a product. And the way we've formulated our catalog, which includes model numbers, really helps to convey that perspective. We see with a car, you can get a bumper-to-bumper warranty, and even though the individual components within the car may have come from different original equipment manufacturers, the vendor of the car warranties and is responsible for the entire product. And if there's a problem with, say, your radio, you don't suffer without a radio while the car vendor and the radio OEM argue over who's responsible. The vendor fixes it promptly for the customer, and then later goes back and resolves the issue of responsibility with the radio OEM. Same thing with CHP. Because of the way we've structured the program, we're actually able to get the CHP vendor, or sometimes also thought of as the integrator, to take full responsibility for the product. And it's not just the guts within the box, it's also the way the box was installed at the site and the way the box was maintained, so that there's no finger pointing. There's nobody saying, well, you know, my engine's okay, it's the way you matched it up with the heat recovery, and the heat recovery folks saying it's not our heat recovery problem, it's the way it was installed at the site, and the installer says it's not our problem, somebody failed to do an oil change, that's the real root cause problem. In this new paradigm, there's one responsible entity, and that helps to minimize errors, reduces those kinds of costs, and raises customer confidence. So as I had earlier mentioned, this sort of in-depth analytical reviews with independent endorsements, we see that that is prolific in the automobile marketplace and was missing from the CHP marketplace. The way we've structured our CHP program as a list of pre-approved measures offered by pre-approved vendors, we now try to fill that missing gap. So the CHP catalog, we've created the catalog. It includes equipment from reputable vendors with reputable components. These are folks that have some staying power. We know that they've been around for a while, that they're going to be around for a while. We ensure that there is harmony within the box. All of the components are properly size matched. The overall solution comes with a bumper-to-bumper coverage. It's not just the equipment, it's not just the integrated product, but it's also the installation and the service. All of that is warranted. It's a turnkey solution, and we ensure that the vendors that we have admitted into the catalog are able to provide adequate local sales and service support. Just like with a car, if you buy your car but there's nobody around to do the oil change for it, it's not going to last very long. So having that local support is critical. We've chosen to assign a specific rebate to each and every item within the catalog, and we're inviting customers to now comparison shop, and we see that as actually being very healthy. So through the power of the purse, we have coalesced market participants to act in a more structured and disciplined manner. All of the items within the catalog are clean and efficient. They have everything they need: integrated controls, bumper-to-bumper warranty, data monitoring. NYSERDA mandates that they come with, at minimum, a 5-year service plan, and each of these systems is capable of running standalone. So bumper-to-bumper warranty, this single point of responsibility, I've mentioned this 3 times now in the past few slides. This is really a major realignment of the relationships that happen in the marketplace, and was specifically achievable due to the program structure. Comparability of benchmarks, apples to apples. It's important that a customer can do an apples-to-apples comparison. And the new way that we've structured this, NYSERDA has actually asked each of the vendors to standardize their data on these reference temperatures. They had originally provided data that was at whatever reference temperature they had chosen. We've picked 3 what we call standardized reference temperatures. This is another example of the discipline that can be achieved via the program structure. And we believe that this comparability of benchmarks, this apples to apples, is really important. We see it in many other markets. For example, in automobiles, everybody quotes their muscle car attributes as being able to go from 0 to 60, from full stop to 60 miles per hour in 4.2 seconds or 4.3 seconds or whatever it is. Nobody says that their car can go from 0 to 57. Everybody says 0 to 60. And that's important for being able to do this sort of apples-to-apples comparison.
Excuse me, Dana. Somebody has raised a question on the service plan. Is the 5-year service plan beyond the warranty period or during the warranty period?
That's the first 5 years of operation comes with a bumper-to-bumper warranty and a service plan that is offered by or administered by the equipment vendor. So whether the vendor actually does the service or they have their factory authorized representative do the service, the vendor is still responsible for the quality of the workmanship of that servicing during the first 5 years. We thought that 5 years was an appropriate term. Mm-hmm.
Well, one other question, actually, speaking to that very subject, somebody has commented a 5-year warranty seems too low for such expensive CHP system. Solar systems typically have a 10-year warranty.
Yeah, so we're shooting to kind of get beyond the break-even point, so that if the system comes with a 5-year warranty and a 5-year maintenance package, we're going to get these systems so that the team that has formed this long-term relationship as a team gets the overall project beyond its simple payback. We think that asking folks to quote prices out into 10 years or longer may be challenging. It may be a lot to ask a customer to sign up with this specific service provider to provide service for 10 years, 15 years, or 20 years. Getting them to the 5-year mark, we think, enables them to appreciate the value of this kind of a relationship, but it gives them the opportunity to comparison shop and perhaps do some price exploration for ongoing beyond there. Great. Thank you for the questions. So jumping back into the slides, I want to highlight the comparison shopping. Again, this is something that we're able to do because of the program structure. It has enabled us to hold a whole series of expos where the dozen different vendors are on display. Customers can come and do some comparison shopping in a very convenient way. I get to say that I love all my children equally. Please pick the one that suits you best. And so the expo actually lets me highlight that these vendors are approved by NYSERDA, but they're all equally approved, and the customers can shop, comparison shop from there. The CHP catalog has right now 13 different vendors. When we first launched it, we had 8 vendors with 36 systems. We're now up to 13 vendors with 141 systems. So it's a living document. It's growing. And you can see that there are multiple vendors within a certain size band that offer competing products. So a customer that is looking for a particular size CHP system has many vendors that they can comparison shop amongst them. We're seeing that customers are satisfied with this breadth of due diligence. And again, this is an example where the program structure, as opposed to merely the incentive dollars, but the program structure is having a desirable impact on the marketplace. This is a catalog cut sheet. Every one of these 141 solutions has a single piece of paper, front and back. within the catalog. It's got a model number circled in red. We've assigned NYSERDA incentives. That was our choice of how much we would assign per product. That's circled in blue. There's some standardized information about the performance of the equipment, its footprint size. We provide an opportunity for the vendor to give an advertising statement. There's contact information. On the back side of the page is a schematic, a one-line diagram showing all the major components that come with this package. I have these pickup trucks as a reminder to emphasize that really what we're offering at this point is a concept of a basic model, but it could come with some minor adjustable features. And you see the pickup truck, and at the top it's the two-door. In the middle it's the four-door pickup truck, and at the bottom it's the four-door with the extended long bed. So it's the same basic product with some slight variations. Right now the catalog is showing the basic product, but the vendors can actually offer some slight variations with that. Regarding maintenance, we see that this maintenance plan is really beneficial to providing good, reliable projects and also enhancing customer confidence. And again, the program structure brings discipline to the marketplace by creating these long-term relationships. It's not just about making a sale, it's actually about establishing long-term relationships. And having the vendor do this maintenance is a win-win situation. The customer gets the most informed, knowledgeable maintenance provided, and the vendor gets to collect the dots of the performance of its equipment in the field to bring that back and identify if there's opportunities for improvements in their product. We're also seeing that this catalog approach is helping to get into the mindset of folks that buy replicates of a given item for fleets. We see with fleets of police cars, they'll pick out a winning version of the automobile and then buy multiples of that, or same thing with taxis. We're looking for that sort of pattern of behavior with supermarkets and hotels and others. And in fact, my greatest aspiration is that the vendors will start selling, and if they've got a suite of products, they might have their best-selling item, and they know that they're going to sell that item again and again. They will, on speculation, on spec, build one, shrink wrap it, have it sitting in their warehouse, knowing that they're going to sell it pretty soon. And at that point, when a customer calls for it, they can say, I'll put it on a truck and we can deliver it on Monday. When we get to that sort of market condition, that really will define arrival at a mature marketplace. I'm not the only one to think of trying to learn what we can from customer buying habits, and in particular how people buy automobiles. At a recent conference, the speaker highlighted that the psychology behind customer decision making and how it should be approached should be done in the same way whether buying a CHP system or a car. So this reinforces the goal, NYSERDA's goal, of striving to get vending to align with the purchasing habits of customers, as opposed to trying to get customers to buy based on the way CHP is currently being sold. Although challenging, still, it is a lot easier to change the vending habits of a dozen or so vendors than to try to change the purchasing habits of an enormous pool of potential buyers. We see that we can learn lessons from other sectors as well, the dairy sector, so not just looking at automobiles, but this whole notion of the dairy sector getting together and creating a unified marketing campaign, the Got Milk campaign, this concept of rising tide floats all boats. This is a way to pool their resources and in a much more cost-effective manner get their products purchased by customers. So likewise with CHP, NYSERDA is running a marketing campaign. CHP is good. Each of our vendors is qualified. But we see an exit strategy. We really see an opportunity for the marketplace to take this over at some point. We want to bring discipline to the market and have the market take ownership. This is going to be our mechanism, our lasting involvement and it's our preferred involvement as opposed to perpetually issuing incentives and subsidies. So the program has been running fantastic, actually above and beyond my wildest dreams. I'd like to again thank CESA for the Slice Award. We're very proud to have received it as recognition for the accomplishments of this program. This program format, we're getting good projects, really good projects. We've got 46 projects that have come in the first 2 years since the launch of the program, of which 29 have equipment delivered to the site or further progress. In fact, several of them are running. We've had 0 attrition. It's not that we're holding on to these projects to make our numbers look good. 46 projects, 29 of them with major equipment or further progress at site. So that's 2/3 of the projects have engaged in serious aspects of construction. These projects are all real. We're seeing all these other benefits, accelerated timelines. We are driving down the soft costs, in particular with customer acquisition. But really, we've transformed the way that deals are occurring in the marketplace, and we think that this is our long-lasting legacy. By getting more healthy comparison shopping, by transitioning to long-term partnerships instead of just the short-term perspective of sales, by putting the CHP vendor, the packager, at the center of the universe, that they know their equipment best, they are going to be the best entity to be responsible on a long-term basis for the health and maintenance of their equipment, and we've structured it in a way to make that happen. There's still a role for consultants. Consultants act as the personal shopper. They can help a building owner identify a size band to be looking at and then comparison shop and do a final selection within that size band. So because our program is structured in this way and the way we actually give out the incentives, the way we sign our contracts and issue our payments, we have used the power of the purse. It has enabled us to cause this sort of a realignment, and we think that this is actually a really important aspect to achieving this market transformation. We also recognize that, as is common with many products, you can have a standardized product with regionalized variations of particular features. And you may notice I happen to drive a Buick, so my example here is a Buick, but a particular make and model of a car sold in Albany is going to be 100% identical to that same make and model car sold in Boston. However, a particular make and model car sold in Albany is going to be almost identical with a small variation to that same make and model sold in Phoenix. The Phoenix version is going to have a heavy-duty radiator. The California version is going to have the emissions control. The Alaska version is going to have the engine block heater, and so on. So it's possible to have a common product with slight regional variations. We're very interested in starting a dialogue to explore expanding the usefulness of this approach so that the list of pre-approved items that NYSERDA has started, we can tailor that to have regional variations and expand this approach to other states. So with that, I'd like to commend my teammates here at NYSERDA for helping to conceive of this program structure, for helping to sell it to NYSERDA's management. We have a $60 million pool of funds for CHP that we are administering as a rebate program. That's pretty significant. We got NYSERDA management to buy into that. We've operationalized it, and we've proved out its merits. So in closing, I want to thank you for this opportunity to introduce this topic, and I look forward to our ongoing dialogue. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Dana. That was a very interesting and thorough presentation. We're going to go immediately to the participants in the webinar, and as I stated before, we do have multiple people on for certain agencies. So in order to handle that without going over our time, I'm going to ask that one person from each agency, as I get to you and call you by state and identify your agency, that one of you electronically raise your hand and I will unmute that person. And if you could just quickly identify yourself and your program, what you're currently doing in the area of CHP and what your interest might be. And I wanted to just say that, the initial impetus for this was that, NYSERDA felt and we felt that a multi-state approach might well be very effective, but it doesn't mean that a multi-state approach needs to do the same thing that NYSERDA has done or in the same way. So we'd like to hear from you, what your interest might be, if you think this is an approach you'd be interested in participating in, or if you think there's something else that some other way that a multi-state approach might be beneficial, even if it's just a series of calls to share information, or some more of an ongoing project. Whatever you think, we'd like to hear from you. So I'm going to go ahead and start going down the list here. We'll go alphabetically. By the way, if you can't find the PIN and you're calling in by phone, please open up the audio pane on the webinar console. It says audio. Click on the little plus symbol next to the where it says telephone. You should see the PIN displayed there. That's what you need to enter. If you haven't done that, please do it. Okay. So going alphabetically, we have two people from the California Energy Commission. If one of you could please electronically raise your hand, I will unmute you, and we will hear from you. Okay, very good. Rizaldo Aldis, go ahead, please.
Hi, good morning. This is Rizaldo, or I should say perhaps good afternoon to our colleagues there in the East Coast. This is Rizaldo.
If you could speak up just a little bit, please.
Yeah, could you hear me?
Just speak a little more loudly, please.
Okay, I'll try. Yeah, this is Rizaldo Aldis. I am with the Energy Commission. We do have a few work related with combined heat and power. My kind of connection here, the Energy Commission is on under the Energy Research and Development Division, and we provide funding for research and development related to combined heat and power.
Okay, and your interest in this initiative, if any?
Oh yeah, I'm interested in this one.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to go to the Colorado Department of Energy State Energy Program, and I think there's one person, Henry Fowler. Go ahead, please. Is Henry Fowler on the line? Okay, I may have stepped away. We'll come back to him. And we'll go along to Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. We have a couple of people on from Connecticut Deep. If one of you could raise your hand, indicate who will be speaking. Okay, I'm going to just choose one of you then, if that's okay. Ryan Ensling, I'm unmuting you. If you could speak, please, for Connecticut Deep. Or Brian Biernat. Either of you could please speak. Okay, we'll come back to you. It looks like Henry Fowler has rejoined us. Henry, would you like to speak now? Henry? Okay. Let's go to, let's see, we have somebody from U.S. DOE who has joined us, Mona Khalil. Please go ahead.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, great. Yes, I'm joining in because I'm part of a effort here at the Department of Energy, the State Energy Program, awards every year state competitive funding to states, and there's an award right now that several states of ours have on CHP. And so your webinar was forwarded to me by one of our awardees, actually from Oregon, and just wanted to learn more about what you are doing.
Okay, very good. Glad you could join us. All right, we will go to Kentucky Department for Energy Development and Independence, and let's find Mr. Lunsford. Are you on? There you are. Bill Lunsford, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. Okay. So we're part of the program that Mono spoke of, and so we're sort of in the process now of continuing to promote CHP at certain events like the Manufacturers Conference that's going on this month. Also, we're pushing out technical assistance into the state. We have some in-state resources here as well as the regional chip tap who is helping us with that. I can certainly appreciate this approach as a former equipment supplier myself in another area, but maybe the thought of having modular concepts or standard products to drive down the cost or increase the customer confidence, I think is a really good idea. I'd have to take it back to my office here and discuss it some before I could say what our state's opinion is of the approach. But personally, I think you guys have done a lot of great work there, and really appreciate that. So we currently don't have the incentives that you all have, the funding. So we appreciate any kind of support that we can get in this way. So.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I'm glad you could join us. So I'm going to go now to Maryland. Michael Leslie, the line is now open. Are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Excellent. Yeah, Mike Leslie, Maryland Energy Administration. I run the CHP program and also commercial and industrial energy efficiency. And so I'm not sure how many folks are familiar with our program. We have actually 2 utility programs that are already set up and running, and that's, again, led by the utilities. It's led by BGE, and then PHI, which is Pepco and Delmarva. And then recently, from testimony that was brought into the Maryland Public Service Commission, we got Atomic Edison, First Energy, to also approve another program. In addition to that, the MEA also launched a program last fall that targets wastewater and healthcare facilities for resiliency. And out of that program, we look to commission 7 new projects over 9 megawatts. So we're pretty excited, new compared to NYSERDA's program. But I would say realistically, this next year we'll probably have 10 megawatts commissioned. The year after that, my goal will be to wrap it up maybe to about 30, and then maybe double the year after that. But that all takes obviously a lot of commitment from all the state's officials. So hopefully we get that support.
Okay, thank you very much. Glad you could join us. We will go next to Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources and Dwayne Breger. Dwayne, are you able to speak to us?
Yeah, I didn't raise my hand, though.
Nope, I'm going down the list, so I'm alphabetically, and you're up.
Oh, okay. Apologize for that. Didn't quite hear that protocol. So yeah, happy to be part of this, and thank you to CESA and and to NYSERDA for the presentation. And I do have some background and somewhat familiar with what the NYSERDA program. I would say that Massachusetts does have certainly incentives through our energy efficiency programs with a rebate that's offered by the utility companies for CHP on a per kilowatt scale, as well as a performance-based incentive through our alternative portfolio standard. And we've been very carefully following what NYSERDA is doing, particularly with the pre-packaged sort of smaller scale commercial CHP units and sort of pre-qualifying them or pre-analyzing them. One of the issues that, or barriers perhaps that we have is that our rebate program through the Mass Save program, it really does require that the utility does a very careful site-specific, application-specific cost-benefit analysis and ties the rebate to that. So it's a little bit more difficult to sort of pre-qualify units without for a rebate without looking at the analysis, the site-specific analysis pretty carefully. But I think what I'm interested in is with what NYSERDA is doing is talking with NYSERDA to Dana and his folks more about the model, how we could benefit from the work that NYSERDA is doing, and even working with our utilities in the energy efficiency program to, streamline at least the process for doing analysis on these packaged CHP systems. So I know that you folks know John Ballum in our office, who heads up our CHP, and I'm sure he's been talking to you guys about that as well. So appreciate the opportunity and look forward to working together.
Hi, this is Dana. If I could just chime in, and thanks, Dwayne, for those great words. Just as a clarification for everybody, here the NYSERDA program, we do also have a very, very rigorous approach to making sure that the package that is chosen for a particular customer site is an appropriate fit. So we weren't able to somehow not do that part of due diligence for making sure that there's good projects. But where we're starting from is that the customer is shopping off of a list where we have confidence that the individual components are good quality equipment and have been engineered to work in harmony with each other.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. Very good.
Okay. Thanks very much. That was Mass DOER. We also have a couple people from Mass CEC on the line. If one of you would electronically raise your hand, I will unmute you and give you a chance. Okay, Galen Nelson, please go ahead.
Hey, thank you. Thanks, Todd, for this, and thank you, Dana, for that presentation. It's great to see what you're doing in New York with CHP. In addition to the question that I inadvertently sent in by writing, extending your car purchase metaphors, NYSERDA offering GMAC-like financing for CHP, I just returned from a working group discussion here around promoting CHP in the healthcare sector, and certainly financing came up a lot. But what I think I'd be most interested in watching your progress going forward is what are the kind of sector-specific arguments that you find are breaking through to building owners, facility managers, CFOs, C-suite staff, because I think that those arguments are going to be very different depending on the sector, whether you're talking to a manufacturing executive or a healthcare executive. And I think we could all learn a lot from simply the volume of deals that you're seeing and what kind of arguments are working. So to us, that is one of the major barriers. I think that you're tackling one of the key barriers with CHP. But even if you figure out the kind of prepackaged approach that you have, I think it still comes down to CHP competing against so many other capital-intensive purchases for a wide range of businesses. So I'd love to continue to stay in touch and hear what you learn from developers about what arguments they find are breaking through.
Thank you, Galen. You also had typed in a question about financing. Did you want to address that, or?
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of mentioned that at the beginning of my remarks, but financing is certainly a barrier for some projects, and I just know that's come up over and over again in CHP conversations. So I'm just wondering what kind of financing, if any, NYSERDA is offering to building owners for CHP.
Sure. Hi, this is Dana. So in addition to the rebate for the pre-approved equipment, The financing for the balance of the costs can be done through a variety of other mechanisms. In New York, we've got the New York Green Bank, which is helping to jumpstart some financing of CHP projects. In New York City, there's the NYSERDA, the New York City Energy Efficiency Corporation. They have tools, innovative financing to projects. So yeah, we should talk at another time about financing. There's a whole lot that we can talk about.
Okay, thanks, Anna.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. We're going to go now to the Minnesota Department of Commerce. Adam Zoet.
Yeah, hi. This is Adam. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. So yeah, this is Adam from the Department of Commerce Division of Energy Resources. We regulate 180 utilities here in Minnesota to make sure that they meet the energy savings goals. And we were actually awarded a DOE grant that Mona mentioned earlier, and we're just kind of getting through carrying out a stakeholder process and developing an action plan for CHP in Minnesota. And I thought the presentation was really relevant to the discussions we had with stakeholders. One of the things that we found was the need to develop like a CHP attribution model, kind of establishing standardized criteria for how CHP savings can be quantified and credited through our program. So I think this discussion to standardize some of the technologies is really interesting, and really appreciated the presentation. So thanks.
Okay, very good. Glad you could join us. We're going to go now to Innovate Mississippi. And Sumesh Arora, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes. Please go ahead.
Okay, great. I was joining by phone. So, good afternoon, everyone. This is Sumesh Arora. I work with an organization called Innovate Mississippi, and we're actually subcontracting with the State Energy Office, which is the Mississippi Development Authority's Energy and Natural Resources Division, who is the actual grantee through the program that Mona mentioned. So we're one of, I guess, a handful of grantees around this around the country to be fortunate to have this opportunity to explore further the opportunities and barriers for CHP in Mississippi and learn from others as well. So this is really helpful in terms of what NYSERDA is presenting. Like Minnesota, we have also worked to form a stakeholder group, and we have representation from the academic sector, some of the couple of equipment vendors who are represented in the South. Capstone Turbine, I noticed their name was on there. And then some state regulators from the Department of Environmental Quality as well as the Public Service Commission, and then some service providers who are can provide engineering and technical services. So we feel like we have the resources in the state to be able to implement the CHP system, but like other states also, we have the same type of barriers. In fact, our biggest barrier, though, which I don't think has been mentioned, is still trying to educate the people on the benefits of CHP. So we're having to step back and say, okay, before we can even get to financing, we still need to be talking about what the basic issues are and why CHP actually makes sense and what the benefits are, and then start addressing the challenges, which, of course, financing is a big one, and we hope to be able to learn from other people of what the financing challenges are. So we're looking forward to this thing, and we do plan on developing a policy white paper as part of our deliverables for this grant. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and thanks for joining us. I'd like to go now to the New Hampshire Office of Energy and Planning. Molly Connors, are you with us? Molly? Okay, sounds like she may have stepped away. And we also have Barbara Bernstein from the New Hampshire PUC. Barbara, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. First, I want to thank Dana for an excellent presentation. It's fabulous to hear. We in New Hampshire, to the best of my knowledge, don't have a program for CHP at this point, but we have allowed provisions within our 2500 rules for thermal RECs from CHP. So it has at least been thought about. So we'll look forward to seeing what is developed in other states, and hopefully we can get on board pretty quickly.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Barbara. I'm glad you could join us. Now we'll go to New Jersey BPU. Scott Hunter, are you there?
Can you hear me, Todd?
Yes, I can hear you.
Todd, my interests in CHP are focused on renewable energy applications, and specifically biopower. We in New Jersey have our primary efforts are on the commercial and industrial energy efficiency side, so I'm not able to speak on behalf of all of our efforts, but I'm interested in monitoring what you all are doing and looking at the application of your findings and recommendations to our biopower CHP program in New Jersey.
Okay. Thank you very much. And now I want to go to Oregon Department of Energy. Marty Stipe, please go ahead.
Good afternoon. This is Marty Stipe from the Oregon Department of Energy. I want to thank you for your presentation today. And be brief, Dana, you mentioned in a comment here in our dialogue that you would try to find projects with appropriate fit. And it's important for me to learn more about how you're doing your evaluations after the fact, after the equipment is installed. As it turns out, in Oregon right now, we're working on a CHP program with the assistance of US DOE's grants that are looking at providing multiple incentives from multiple agencies, the some utility-based carbon reduction projects and utility energy efficiency incentives, as well as state financial assistance. But our state assistance comes in the form of tax credits that are coming at the projects via a competitive process as opposed to a calculated rebate, so to speak. And so I'm really interested in finding more about how your projects are penciling out in the analysis after the fact, because that will help guide us more towards the rebate model for the incentives. At the moment, we're still needing those packaged incentives, and the challenge is to actually do multiple agency program alignment on releasing these incentive offerings, which get actually down into the 3 to 4 year payback range, which we're still working through the incentive process. We're not quite to the market-based transformation yet. But I'm glad to see that you have low attrition. That leads me to believe that there'll be some nice data coming down the road. So I look forward to learning more about your program in the future. Thank you.
Great, thank you. This is Dana. Just to respond to that, that's a great point. We will be doing commissioning and recommissioning of all of these projects. So when they first start operation, they'll be commissioned, and then sometime after they've run for at least a year, but not more than 2 years. So during their sophomore year of operation, they've gotten to go through all the different seasons, but they're not that old. So if we have opportunities for improvements, it can still capture those benefits for the rest of the long life of the equipment. And through this extensive recommissioning effort, we're commissioning and recommissioning, we're going to capture a wealth of data. We're going to do some very aggressive data analytics to see what we can learn, how we can translate that into wisdom, and to hopefully be able to move the market by providing compelling examples and good advice. And the more that we provide compelling examples and good advice, the less lucrative an incentive we'll otherwise have to provide. So we're fully committed to collecting all that kind of information, translating reams of data into actual wisdom, and then sharing that with the marketplace.
that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm aware that it's 3 o'clock, but we have just a couple people left on our list who haven't had a chance to speak, so I'm just going to ask your indulgence for another minute or two to allow these people to speak, and then we will wrap this up. So I wanted to ask Satish Ravindran from the Houston Advanced Research Center in Texas. And let me unmute you. Please go ahead. Satish?
Yes.
From HARC? Yes, please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Satish. I work with Houston Advanced Research Center and CECO DOE. As many states mentioned, we are also one of the states working on the barriers project to CHP. So we are trying to engage different stakeholders, trying to understand the barriers to CHP in Texas. And really, once we do those barriers, identify those barriers, we are trying to develop a action plan to make sure we come up with solutions. So right now, we have found out that most of these barriers are policy related, and we are finding that interconnection and permitting are the top 2 barriers in the state of Texas. So we are trying to work towards solutions to overcome those barriers. So one of the things we are trying to do is do a dynamic interconnection process map where we could help the user understand through each stage of the interconnection process. So that's what we are currently doing right now. I also wanted to mention there is a CHP Technical Assistance Partnership Program with the DOE that is managed by SPEAR, SPER, here in Texas. So they are doing a lot of feasibility studies in the world of CHP, trying to work with end users and identifying the potential for CHP adoption. So that's all I have for the state of Texas. And thanks again for the wonderful presentation. The environment here in Texas is a little bit different from there, where NYSERDA is more active in the CHP market. Here, CHP is unfortunately not included in the energy efficiency resource standards, so there is no utility rebates or anything from utilities here in Texas.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I think the last person on our list here is Ken German from Virginia Department of Mines, Minerals, and Energy. Ken, are you with us? Ken? Okay, apparently Ken is muted. I've unmuted you, and if you're still muted, then you must have muted yourself. If you've done that, I'm not sure how to tell you you need to unmute. I'm not sure what that looks like on your end. If you want to just type in a question or a comment, I'll relay it for you. Okay, and while we're waiting to see if Ken can join us, if there's anybody else that I skipped or that didn't get to speak or that has a burning issue, please raise your hand electronically now, and I will attempt to give you that opportunity. Okay, and I see Marty Stipe, you have your hand up. I'm not sure. Did you want to say something?
No, that was an accident.
Okay. All right. So I think that is pretty much everybody that we've been able to hear from. I apologize if you weren't able to speak for some technical reason. We have a message here from Ken in Virginia. He says, not much happening in Virginia. 3 universities are looking into CHP, but nothing's implemented. Okay. So not seeing any further comments, I want to thank everybody for joining us. This is a good start. I think that what will happen next is that we will circulate a doodle poll to everybody who registered for this webinar, including a number of people that were on our list but didn't make it for whatever reason. And we will try to set up a second call and allow everybody more of an opportunity to talk at that point and maybe discuss what the next steps might be that you'd be all would be interested in taking. Dana, did you have any last words?
I just wanted to thank everybody again for your interest in participating, and thank you, CESA, for the opportunity to speak.
Okay, so thanks everybody for joining us. Again, please keep an eye out. We will circulate a poll to schedule a follow-up call. And meanwhile, please feel free to contact me. My email is there on your screen. I have one last message here from Ken German, who says, from Virginia, who says, regulated utilities and a master electric contract for all state agencies with no provision for on-site power gen makes it difficult. All right, understood, and hopefully we can help you to address that. Thanks again, everybody, and I think we're going to conclude this. By the way, this was a recorded webinar. Samantha, do you want to give them an idea of how they can refine this if they want to send it to a colleague or review it?
Sure. I will send out a link to the recording of this webinar sometime this afternoon, within a few hours. You should all receive that by email.
Terrific, and that's going to be archived on our sites along with all our other webinars, so you'll get a link to that. You can feel free to forward that link to anybody that might want to review it. Thanks again, and we hope to talk to you all soon. Bye-bye.